Hey everybody, welcome back to another guitar lesson. My name is Lauren and this is 101 Guitar Lessons. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to be discussing guitars, obviously, but more specifically, if you're learning how to play the guitar or you're thinking about learning how to play the guitar, which guitar should you learn on? Should you learn on an acoustic first? Or maybe you should learn on an electric first? Or maybe you should learn on a classical guitar, and on and on and on. I get asked that question all the time, and I see it on all the social media forums, at least on a weekly basis. Somebody's thinking about playing, perhaps you are, and you'd like to know which guitar should you get first. Well, we're going to answer that today. Before we get into it, please remember to press that like button, subscribe to the channel for lots of great videos for beginners and intermediate players. We release content at least twice a week. So leave a comments down below if you have questions or requests at any time, but thank you so much for joining, and let's get into the video. Okay, so guitars. Right now I'm holding an acoustic guitar, and the benefits of learning on an acoustic guitar really are clarity and an immediate response. The other thing that you can consider is that it's very portable. If you want to go out, hang out with your friends, go jam at a buddy's house, take it for lessons, whatever, you don't need any accessories other than maybe a pick. You just need your guitar and you can go. So that's one of the benefits. Now, the big, strong benefit of learning how to play the guitar on an acoustic guitar like this is you've got steel strings, okay? So steel strings, or brass strings, on and on, you can hear. All right, I'm just finger picking today. You can hear there's an immediate bright attack to the string, and you can hear that there's some good sustain. But when you're actually playing, you can hear also very clearly if you make a mistake, your finger isn't in the right position. You can hear if it's muted, you can hear if it's buzzed very clearly because it's an immediate response. There's nothing interfering with hearing the result of what you're actually doing, okay? So the other benefit of learning how to play the guitar on an acoustic guitar is that you're going to go and strengthen your fingers, I think, a lot faster. Now, it might be harder at first. This is the drawback. It might be a little more challenging because the strings tend to have a little more tension, and sometimes they sit a little bit high on the neck. You can take that into, your guitar store, guitar repair shop, and they can fix that for you so that the action isn't too high. The action meaning where the string sort of floats on top of the neck. Sometimes if it's way up here, it's not so great. But the benefits of learning on that type of guitar, or this type of guitar, is that it really strengthens your fingers. You get an immediate response. You can hear if you make a mistake, you can hear right away. And I think your fingers get stronger faster. Yes, it might be a little bit harder at first because of, going from nothing to that kind of tension, but the benefits, I think, far outweigh the drawbacks. So that is the benefit and sort of negative side of learning on an acoustic guitar. Next, let's talk about a classical style guitar. So here I've got a classical style guitar. I don't have a full-size classical. I just have a 3/4 size classical. Now that's another thing to consider. If your hands or your body is smaller, or you maybe are a little bit younger, a 3/4 size guitar is always a good possibility for you. Now you can get 3/4 size guitars in nylon strings or classical guitars, acoustic guitars, electric guitars. It's not something I would necessarily suggest for anyone other than a kid or someone who has really small hands, because you will get used to it if you have a full-size guitar, but it's something to consider. So, having said that, I got this guitar for my daughter, and she's learning how to play on it. It is a little bit easier because the spacing and the frets are a little bit closer. As well, the strings tend to be a little bit easier on the fingers because they're nylon rather than steel, so they're not as hard. There isn't as much soreness when you're first starting. The drawback of this type of guitar is that, generally speaking, and I'll talk about as if it's a full-size guitar, is that classical guitars tend to have a very flat radius. So the neck tends to be very flat, which is okay, but it also tends to be a little bit wider than normal. So the spacing of the strings tends to be a bit wider, and that's something to consider. But you get the same immediate kind of response and attack that you get with an acoustic, in that when you play, okay, you can hear right away if you make a mistake. If it's not quite coming out clearly, you can hear that it's buzzing, it's not really right. So that's the thing to consider, that is a plus definitely for this type of guitar. It's just as portable. But you'll hear with the strings, and again, I'm just finger picking today, but it's a little bit more of a duller, softer sound. And this is way out of tune, I just realized. But this is more of a softer sound. It doesn't have the immediacy and brightness and fullness of a full-size acoustic guitar that you would have, but it is softer on the fingers. Again, you may have to stretch a little bit more coming across the neck because they do tend to be a bit wider in the neck, but they do tend to be rather flat as well. So that's something to consider with regard to classical. And you can learn, just because you're playing an acoustic guitar or a classical guitar or an electric guitar, you're not stuck to a certain genre or style of music. You can play anything on anything. It all is the same. The strings are the strings, the frets are the frets, that's it. You might not be able to make this sort of squeal with distortion and delay like you could on an electric guitar, but you can still play the same notes. So I wanted to throw that out there. So let's talk about the idea of learning how to play on an electric guitar. So here's an electric guitar. This happens to be a Telecaster or T-style guitar, okay? But we're not talking about different styles of electric guitars today. We're just talking about the idea of an electric. They all have fairly common traits, mainly being that the strings are similar to an acoustic guitar in that they're steel, though they're usually not as heavy or rigid, so it's a bit easier to play. They're a lighter gauge. So you could play, I play rather heavy gauges. I play 11 to 52, which is not common. Most people will play 9s or 10s on an electric guitar, and that'll be a lot easier on the fingers. The scale length tends to be, again, depending on the guitar, maybe a little bit closer. The neck is a lot narrower and not as fat, sort of thickness-wise this way as a typical acoustic guitar. So it may be easier physically for your hands to go ahead and learn on this type of guitar. The problem is that you can play it acoustically like this. I don't have it plugged in right now. You can still hear it. Okay, but if you really want any kind of volume, you're gonna have to plug into an amplifier. So the purchase right off the bat, the investment is a little bit heavier up front because you have to get the guitar and an amplifier and a cable to, of course, connect the two. And then if you want any effects, if it's not built into the amplifier, on and on. But, and it's not as portable. So you can't go and play in a park or your backyard. You have to be connected to electricity, obviously. So the benefit of this is, yes, your fingers can maybe find a happy medium between sort of like classical and acoustic in terms of ease because the string gauge is a little bit lighter, but you don't have the immediacy of attack. And also what tends to happen is these can be a lot of fun. They're like toys also, and you plug it in and you play and you have some distortion going on because you want to rock out, and you're not going to be able to hear when you make mistakes as easily. It's going to hide a lot of the mistakes that you're making as a beginner. And I think that ultimately your technique and your progress is going to suffer because of that. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't start on electric. If you have an electric and you want to learn how to play and that's all you've got, go for it. Ultimately, I don't think it matters as long as it's going to make you happy, it's going to keep you motivated and keep you playing. So, you know, not to spoil the ending or anything, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you're playing, you want to play it, it makes you happy, and you're playing it consistently. But in terms of an ideal situation, I firmly believe starting on an acoustic guitar with the steel strings is the most ideal way to start to learn how to play the guitar. You're going to learn right away. When you're making mistakes, you're going to hear it, you're going to recognize it. You're always going to want an acoustic guitar. It's always going to be portable and easy, and you're going to be able to go and jam with friends or at a park just by sort of throwing it in a case on your back or whatever. So an acoustic guitar is a fantastic investment that'll stay with you forever. Like I said, if you only have an electric or only have a classical, don't worry about it. That's cool too. Go ahead, just start playing is the key. So whatever's going to keep you playing and make you happy, go for it. Now, people will ask, and we touched on this a little bit, is there a difference between classical and electric? Can I only play this or that? No, you can play anything on anything. The other thing to keep in mind with an acoustic guitar, going back to that for a moment, is that you can get an acoustic guitar with a jack that you can plug in to an amplifier. I'll show you what I mean. So here's an example of another acoustic guitar that I have, and it has a jack that you can plug in to a cable. It's got a pickup, okay? And that picks up the sound and will take that sound through to an amplifier. So you can kind of rock out that way to start if you want as a happy medium, but it's not necessary to have. So another cool feature that some of these do have, though, is that when you buy an acoustic guitar with a pickup, with a pickup in it, is they tend to have a cutaway, which is nice. You have ease of access to upper frets if you want that. But also, a lot of them tend to have a tuner built into it. Now, this is an older guitar. It doesn't have a tuner built into it, but a lot of them do. So if you're wondering, you'd like to see some links and research, I have some links down below to three different types of guitars in the description. Check them out, do your research, and if you have questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I used to work in guitar stores growing up as a teenager and fixing guitars and selling guitars, so I should be able to answer most of your questions. Hopefully this was helpful and guided you along the right path. Remember, ultimately, as long as you want to play the guitar that you have, you're good to go. Just make sure, another great accessory, if you don't have a tuner built in, is buy a tuner. Definitely buy a guitar tuner or get one of those little apps that you can get on your phone. You can get some free ones or really inexpensive ones, because when you're learning how to play and it doesn't sound like it's in tune, even if you're playing the right thing, it's going to sound wrong. So make sure that you're always playing in tune. Not like that classical guitar that I was holding and I didn't even check it before I started the video. But I hope this helps get some answers, gives you some answers, and leads you down the right path. Check out one of the other videos after this is done. Get started in some of the lessons, some easy finger exercises, some chords. It'll really get you going. We've got a whole library worth of lessons in this channel, so make sure that you subscribe. We have at least 2 new videos every week, and if you want more, then I'll do my best to get more out there. All right? Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you guys next time. Remember, guitar is a journey. It is not a destination, so enjoy the journey. Take care. Bye.